Gimmick, a trick or device intended to attract attention or increase appeal. Some might say if you look up the word gimmick in the dictionary, you'll see a photo of America's favorite racing series. NASCAR has never been afraid to change things to try and maintain relevance, to drum up interest or excitement. The cars, the schedule, the format, the rules. Oh God, burn it, burn it! But sometimes the best things happen by accident. A little over a decade ago, NASCAR inadvertently created one of the most polarizing gimmicks in the sport's long history. A gimmick that has since largely disappeared, but to this day is still missed by many fans and still hated by many others. No matter where you fall, you cannot deny that the two-car tandem was one of the most interesting gimmicks in all of NASCAR history.
Get them down there about 190 mile an hour. I can drive the heck out of them right there.
For decades now, both Daytona International Speedway and Talladega Superspeedway have been among the most unique and most popular tracks on the NASCAR circuit. Americans love speed. In 1987, Bill Elliott set a NASCAR record when he made a lap around Talladega at over 212 miles per hour, a record that still holds to this day and likely will never be broken. In 1988, the year after Bill Elliott set that record, NASCAR mandated that all cars be outfitted with restrictor plates, limiting their power in an attempt to reduce speeds at the biggest and baddest racetracks. This was done primarily in the name of safety, but it didn't take long for a new, arguably more dangerous style of racing to emerge: pack racing.
It made everybody the same speed, and that made it probably more dangerous than when we were running 210.
Drivers now had to learn how to maneuver and manipulate turbulent air to jostle their way to the front of a pack that was 20, 30, 40 race cars strong. Fans by and large fell in love with the close quarters action, the spectacular massive crashes, while drivers were often quick to criticize. Dale Earnhardt Sr., who won 8 restrictor plate races at Talladega alone, was often one of the most outspoken critics of pack racing.
It's not good racing, though. Y'all can talk about all you want. It ain't good racing.
In an attempt to keep both fans happy and drivers at least satisfied, NASCAR would continue to tinker with the cars, tinker with the rules package for super speedways. But no matter what they did, some form of pack racing persisted well into the 21st century.
That isn't bump drafting, that's just plain old pushing right there.
As pack racing became a cultural stock car staple, teams and drivers began to figure out new ways to gain an advantage. By the mid-2000s, occasionally, 2 drivers would work together to split from the rest of the pack, building a larger lead than fans were used to seeing at superspeedway-style tracks. Ironically, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was one of the first drivers to see and understand the potential of this new style of drafting. A perfect storm of circumstances made it easier than ever for 2 cars to lock bumpers and reach higher speeds. Talladega Superspeedway was repaved in 2006. Fresh asphalt meant more grip meant more stability, higher speeds. The polarizing car of tomorrow, designed with safety at the forefront, debuted in 2007 and had a flatter front and rear bumper, again, making it easier to square up other cars and stay hooked together even at those high speeds. Here in 2008, you can see Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Reed Sorensen pioneering the 2-car tandem, if you will, using it to their advantage to gain a pretty substantial lead over the pack in the closing laps of their duel race. Another more infamous example would be the finish to the 2009 Aaron's 499 at Talladega, where several leaders were taking advantage of the 2-car tandem, obviously resulted in a violent airborne crash. I mentioned Talladega's 2006 repave. In 2010, the other superspeedway, Daytona, was repaved, which meant by 2011, the 2-car tandem was truly ready to shine. This year took the phrase, it takes 2 to tango, to new levels. Peer pressure fully prevailed. By 2011, everyone was tandem drafting. Without a dance partner, you were destined to drop like a rock. Tandem drafting made an 8, 9, 10 plus mile per hour difference. Gone was the pack racing of previous generations. Now, Daytona and Talladega looked completely different. Fans were quickly split. Some loved the novelty of this new style of racing, while others longed for the big, spectacular pack racing they'd become familiar with. Drivers were split as well, though many of the most vocal drivers were not in favor. Like Dale Earnhardt Jr. once said, quote, "I'd rather have control of what I've got to do. Having to have responsibility for someone else is a little bit more than I care to deal with." One added wrinkle to the tandem racing gimmick was that for these races, NASCAR and the teams allowed the drivers to talk directly to one another. During the race, yes, drivers had little dials in their car that allowed them to call up any other driver on the racetrack. That was always fun to listen to. As a kid, I had NASCAR Race View every year, or maybe at this time it was still like Track Pass or whatever they called it, but I would listen to the radio broadcasts, and it was always fun to hear other drivers pop in over my favorite guys, channel, talk strategy, maybe make some jokes. It allowed for some really fun and kind of iconic moments.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and some two here. I got to get some more air here.
Hey, 22, this is 18. We got to work together. Ain't that a shame?
2011 did feature some of the most memorable finishes in modern NASCAR history. For years, superspeedway racing had granted the underdog teams a better shot at racing near the front. Somehow, tandem racing only increased the parity. In the season opener, 20-year-old Trevor Bayne won the Daytona 500, making just his second NASCAR Cup Series start ever. A massive upset that made headlines across the world. Now, this race did feature, I believe, a record-setting 17 cautions, so it was clear that many drivers hadn't figured out the two-car tandem racing just yet. But maybe Daytona was a fluke. Nope. The spring Talladega race saw 8 cars under a blanket photo finish. Teammates working together. It was 5-time champion at that point, Jimmy Johnson, getting the win. Whoa! When NASCAR went back to Talladega in the fall, they saw another, albeit very different, photo finish. This time it was teammates Jeff Burton and Clint Bowyer using the two-car tandem to build a huge lead over the rest of the pack. Bowyer pulls out, side-by-side side drafting, contact photo finish. Great stuff, awesome stuff. Even the naysayers at the time, I think, were able to admit that the two-car tandem helped produce some of NASCAR's most memorable superspeedway finishes.
The water's blowing, it doesn't matter now. You're coming to the white flag. You're not even looking at the water temperature gauge.
One thing I found interesting when looking back at this era for this video was that even before the 2011 season, NASCAR was looking at trying to eliminate the two-car tandem. They could see what was coming and they were afraid of what they'd inadvertently created. They made some slight changes to the cars ahead of the 2011 Daytona 500, but as we just saw, they clearly didn't work. But after Daytona turned out to be kind of a huge hit with a surprise underdog winner, a great story. Yeah, there were a lot of cautions, but they also set a NASCAR record with 74 lead changes. NASCAR was suddenly willing to kind of ride things out, see where the two-car tandem took them. NASCAR CEO at the time, Brian France, said, quote, "It's different, but generally speaking, if competition goes up, the races are exciting, we're going to like it." But by the end of 2011, enough fans and drivers had spoken up. NASCAR was going to change the rules in time for 2012. I actually read an article the other day from 2012 where NASCAR officials cited a survey they'd conducted themselves that found 40% of NASCAR fans hated the two-car tandem. The majority of fans wanted to see pack racing make its triumphant return. So NASCAR went to work. They tested slightly smaller rear spoilers, actually a larger restrictor plate during the 2011 into 2012 offseason. But perhaps most importantly, the radiator and accumulator were both downsized.
Watching that water pressure, watching the water temperature, because the way NASCAR has changed the rules around and moved that grill opening where the cars can't get a lot of air to them to try to break up that two-car tandem. That is the $200,000 question tonight.
The goal of these changes was to make the cooling systems less efficient, and for the most part, these changes worked. Though I do remember during the 2012 Daytona duels, Jimmy Johnson and Matt Kenseth got hooked up in the last lap of their race and drove straight to the front. But it was different. Because of the changes NASCAR made, you couldn't stay tucked underneath someone indefinitely. You needed to let some air into your radiator or else you were going to overheat, start pushing water. So naturally, drivers could only push for maybe a lap at most at a time. It's been over a decade now, and the two-car tandem has never returned to its 2011 peak. But that being said, the two-car tandem does make an appearance from time to time. It's like Godzilla. You can't kill it off permanently. It always comes back. Once everyone's learned something, you can't unlearn it. NASCAR's tried banning it in the past. They've had rules against locking bumpers, but still, at the end of races, as recently as last year's Daytona 500, I mean, look at the leaders. That looks a lot like a couple of two-car tandems to me. The legacy of one of NASCAR's most interesting, most polarizing, greatest gimmicks lives on to this day. Let me know down in the comment section below how you feel about the two-car tandem all these years later. Would you like to see it return to the degree it was used in that 2011 season? Let me know down in the comment section below. While you're down there, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR every single day, all year long. I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you in the next episode, folks. Have a good one.